Welcome, Walnut. I'm Lara, but you can call me Laz, your host for Walnut Wednesday. This is your reminder to be brave, be yourself, and know that you can make the world a better place just by what you decide today. Here, I'm going to share my weekly walnuttings with you on a Wednesday.
Hello, Walnut. It is me, Laz, here for another episode of Walnut Wednesday, and I am here for episode 60 with repeat guest and delicious banana, Kate Bromley. Welcome.
Hello. Kate. Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Happy to have you. How are you today?
I'm actually really good today because it's been up and down, but I'm feeling good today. So probably because I'm on this podcast.
It's always a good time. So Walnut, if this is your first time listening, Kate is on every 10th episode with me. We started this weird tradition, didn't we? Where it's like, you want to be on episode 10, and then we're like, you made a joke about being on episode 20, and then now we've just continued it. So every 10 episodes, you get the luxurious, wonderful experience of listening to us just yap.
It's worked. We like it. Well, we like it.
Yeah. So if you ever have my invitation to you, Walnut, if you ever have any topics that you want Kate and I to riff on or banter about, do let us know. Either jump into the walnut tree or message us both on the socials, because we can talk about a lot, and we do in our own time anyway, don't we?
Anything and everything.
Absolutely. And that's why we're such good friends.
Yeah.
So being close to Christmas time, close to New Year's, Kate, I thought we could just talk about 2020 ending the year, but also, I remember I did this post, and I don't know if it was this year or the year prior, but it was that I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. I believe in strong coffee. Also, it was something like that, because also being an open heart center, sticking to stuff, I've just never been a New Year's resolution kind of girl anyway. So I thought we could talk a little bit about ending this year and morphing on to the next year, and see what happens. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I think of all the years, it's one for looking back and being retrospective. I think trying to be kind of optimistic, actually, which is weird considering the year it's been. But I know, I do like going into the year with sort of not so much resolutions, but goals and a bit of a mindset on what I want to accomplish. And we spoke towards the beginning of the year when obviously the first lockdown and stuff was happening around March, April. And I was not having a great time because I am a freelancer and film production was completely just shut down. And I was very much I'm not doing anything. I'm not accomplishing anything. I'm not moving any closer to any goals. And you gave me really good advice. And you were just stop kind of writing down what you need to do and what you freaking out about what is left on the list to accomplish, and find ways to remember the things that you have done, big or small. So I actually, I rarely follow through on things like that, but I actually did. And I kept a little list called Evidence. And it started with things just entering my short film into a festival that was online, editing podcasts for you, or appearing on the podcast, just those little things. And then obviously as the year's gone on, I every now and then, every few weeks or a month or so, I will go back to that list and be what have I kind of done? And I think it's such an important thing to look back and not even just celebrate, but acknowledge what you've actually done, especially when it's a tough time. Some days for me, I was hooray, I got out of bed and showered today kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But I did get a lot done this year. And it was funny, one of my big goals this year was to do more commercial content and production wise, maybe not doing so much of the corporate just kind of piece to camera interview things, which is great. It's good bread and butter content, but I wanted to do some more kind of really fun, exciting projects this year. And weirdly enough, as I look back, and even though work only started picking up in like July, August, the majority of my projects have actually been that. And without realizing it, I was like, oh, I've kind of achieved my goals, because I became less goal orientated and more just like take opportunities as you find them. And by recording it, I've seen the proof of it. Another one was like one that I didn't think would be a big deal, but actually felt really great, was finally releasing my short film, The Cover, which we've spoken about before, directed and produced, and it was written by a friend of mine, Etta Mosier, who we may or may not be hearing from soon as well. And yeah, exactly. Plug for a few episodes from now. He wrote it and edited it, and we put it in the festival circuit last year. And this year everything kind of slowed down, so it was nice to take a little moment, put the film out, and kind of like re-celebrate that too. So yeah, I think the biggest thing for me as the year's winding down is looking back and being like, what did you manage to do throughout a year that was really difficult? And be grateful and thankful and like proud of yourself for those things. Like I made a conscious choice to start giving to charities, which is one of those things I kind of kept putting off fairly selfishly, like in the sense of, well, I'm not earning that much and this, that, and the other. And I realized as things were popping up, I'm like, I can afford £5 a month to this place and that place. And of course, I put that on the list because it's like, I'm really glad I'm giving to charities. That's been a goal of mine. And instead of putting it on a to-do list, I put it on a have done list, like an evidence of the year, and taking that forward. So yeah, I mean, that's a big, long kind of rundown, but that's kind of where I'm at when I'm getting towards the end of the crazy, I mean, let's be honest, clusterfuck that was 2020. And being like, what good came out of it, and even just my small little world, because I mean, unfortunately, it's as much as I can control. What did I do that was good for me? What did I do that was good for my friends? And what did I do, even £5 a month, that might be good for the rest of the world? And you know what? It's added up. And I think going into 2021, that's going to be a big kind of mindset for me too, is keeping that up, being like, write down your accomplishments, celebrating them, big and small. And by the end of the year, you realize you've actually come a really long way.
Yeah, I love that. It's using hindsight, but it's using hindsight powerfully rather than going, oh, look at this opportunity that I could have, I wish I should have, could have, would have. It's, using it to be like, yeah, bitch, I did that. Actually, if you're watching this, Walnut, I'm pointing, but you can see behind me, that's my evidence list as well. I've got like little notes beside my bed, they're my affirmations and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm a very big believer in evidence lists. And yeah, my evidence list is a little bit to do with like money, or when I've like manifested or won stuff, like it's kind of like everything as well, but not necessarily just stuff I do either. So I'm really, really proud of you. That's really good. And I've actually been doing this week a masterclass, which is called, it's all about finishing the year and stuff like that. And one powerful thing I got out of one of the modules was literally, you could call it a journal prompt, or you could just call it a statement, but this is the year that I ... And I actually found myself like basically similar to the evidence list, but also affirming it to I. So for me, things that came up was like, this is the year that I created an online festival and it was successful. This is the year that I enjoyed myself and being who I am and not feeling like a piece of shit. This is the year that I bought size 16 jeans and didn't feel bad about it. This is the year that I want it, like, so much. When you really sit down and have a little breath and take a moment, like, there is so much that we all have achieved and done and can be proud of. It's just you need to take that little time and use hindsight powerfully to reflect on it, I suppose. And so Kate, and with going into the new year, you mentioned that you're going to kind of continue to use that mindset as like a tool, but have you, in terms of like your goal setting, is there something that you particularly like do or whatever? Let's talk about maybe, because I don't quite believe in New Year's resolutions and stuff, but it's important for you to have them. So maybe we could have a discussion about setting goals, or realistic goals, I suppose, as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, like, what is a realistic goal? Because I had some, like, I remember having a chat around this time of year with my sister. It was probably Christmas Day, actually. And she was similar. She said, like, what do you kind of want? Even if you don't know how you're going to get it, or what would you want for next year? And we had a really great chat. And there have certainly been goals, or, just even, a million holidays and bits and pieces that I've not been able to do this year. So like sometimes the most realistic thing, like going away for your friend's 30th birthday to Italy, which is all booked, isn't going to happen because a worldwide pandemic happens. Like, that's the thing about goals. Like I remember, I think one of the things I really had to do this year as well was let some of that stuff go. I remember sitting outside on my balcony and like at night smoking, stressed out or just, downcast. And I just set out to the universe like, I had plans. It was like, the world doesn't care. It's not the world doesn't care, but it's like, but what happens if you can't do those things? So a lot of the things I guess I want to do for next year are things I haven't been able to do this year. And it's a lot of it's personal. I feel like professionally I'm on the right track, and I've always kind of chugged along, and I definitely feel like that's still evolving and moving in the direction that I like. But one thing that I've never undervalued, but I will never underestimate the importance of ever again is being social and seeing friends. So when and if, I know things are, better in New Zealand, but when and if things are getting right in the UK and Europe, and, traveling's a normal thing to do again, I'm really excited to start getting trips in. One thing I really want to do early in the year, whether it's somewhere nearby or abroad, is actually go somewhere on my own and actually give myself some time and space to actually think about what I want out of the year, rather than just sitting, in my room writing a weird list like I would normally do. So for next year, I guess that's why I want to think more about the evidence stuff, is what did I achieve this year? What meant something to me? And those are the things that I've clearly taken a lot of value out of. And that's kind of what I want to just continue to do. And what things couldn't I do this year that I really want to try and accomplish? So there's not a lot yet that's really specific, but what is really important is making a time and a space to actually really consider those things, and like kind of unapologetically take some time out from the normal life to go be in an Airbnb or a hotel somewhere and just, write down some thoughts, ponder the situation, think about what's important to me. And so I guess watch that space maybe for the next episode I'm on to see where I've gotten to. But my first goal is really just getting some headspace to even think about it.
I think that's also a really hard, in particular for me, it's a hard question to answer, because it's like what movie in The Notebook, Ryan Gosling, what do you want, huh, what do you want? And it's like, I don't know what I want. And then I'm like the crying lady, because I don't actually know. And I've been to so many, I've spent a lot of money on like group programs and lots of personal development stuff, and it does come down to what's your vision, what do you want, and I don't bloody know. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing,
And that's okay. I think that's the thing, is that's okay. Like sometimes I think working tirelessly towards goals without maybe stopping to reflect on whether they're still the same dreams that you have, because we all change and grow, and things that haven't happened for me this year maybe haven't mattered that much as I thought they would.
Yeah.
And then a lot of goals and things maybe aren't even in your control. Like, I'm not saying I want to get married next year, but I'd like to get married one day. But I'm not exactly being like, right, what's the checklist to get there? You know what I mean? I'm like, that'd be nice, and we'll see what happens. But I think being able to think about what you want, and also being able to say, I actually don't really want a lot. I'd quite like for things to continue on the way they are and progress. Like, what you're doing with your podcast is slowly just getting bigger and better. And like you say, you did you had all those people coming in. What'd you call it again? Not a festival, but
online festival.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
The festival, and like that bred out of the year, kind of the anniversary of the podcast and that kind of thing. And it's like, sometimes you're just doing it. Sometimes you don't have to, be like, here are my goals. Sometimes every day you're just moving on a path that you've laid out for yourself without even realizing it. I think the danger is for anyone who hasn't thought about it at all and is plugging along in some job or some life that they've never really given much thought to, if that is what they want. So I think sometimes it's quite brave to either change your life radically, which I think a lot of people have done, and I'm such an advocate for it. I'm like, my mom was, I think, late 40s, early 50s when she went back and got her master's in social work. And she's like killing it, and she's really like high in her field. And like, I don't even know how she did that with another full-time job and still.
Yes, Mama Broms.
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's such an inspiration that it's like, there's never too late. Like, they took off. My dad was like, I really want to live in France for a bit and teach English as a second language. And then they did it. So I'm all for like, it's never too late to change your life. But I also think sometimes it's like, if you don't think next year I really need to do this, or next year I really need to do that, because you're happy, own that too. That's awesome. That's great. As long as you've taken that time to really consider it, and that's really how you feel, then sometimes there's that idea that you should always be striving for more. You should be the top of your field, or you should be doing stuff bigger and better every year. And it's like, or do you? If you're happy, do you really need to? Like, I'm sure there's some silver medalists, like Olympic winners, who are like, I never got the gold, but I got the silver, and then I didn't go back to the Olympics again, and I'm cool with it. You know what I mean? Like, they maybe don't lie awake at night going, what if I'd gotten the gold? Sometimes it's great to just revel in being content and happy on the path that you're on. And I think that's what I had to do this year when I couldn't like go out there and really hustle for some stuff, and maybe think, well, what am I missing? And I wasn't missing a lot. I just made sure I called my friends more and chatted to them more. And I missed holidays, which I can have again in the future at some point. It's not like I've missed the boat. But sometimes being like, I don't want for much is beautiful.
Yeah, and it comes back to presently intentionally living, right? And thinking about it. So that Ryan Gosling, what do you want? I mean, it doesn't really need to be, if you're thinking about it, you've already won in some senses, right? And this reminds me a little bit of like a tool that I've learned in a class that I've been taking with Kate Decker, who's been on the podcast before. It's a money class, but you can kind of relate it to real life as well. But in terms of goal setting, she has the 3 Ps, which is, what's your predictable goal? So what you know is going to happen for the month or the week or whatever. What you know, you can bank on it. It's going to happen, right? So that could be like, I'm going to brush my teeth. I'm going to get out of bed. I'm going to make $30, or whatever. Then the next one is your possible goal. So it's like, maybe you've done it once or twice, but, still like, holy shit, yay, it happened kind of thing. And then on top of that one is like the big kahuna, big mama, which is called the potential goal, which is like the holy fucking shit, how the fuck did I get here? What the fuck am I magic kind of goal. Yeah. And celebrating along the way. So when you hit that the goal, I actually just realized I don't like the word goal, but when you hit that predictable level, still celebrating that because you did it. And she's a big advocate for celebration and stuff like that. And I feel like celebration is a really important tool for presently living and being grateful. Yes. So yeah, that was my 2 cents on the what do you want thing. But yeah, how do you feel about celebrating stuff, and what do you do to celebrate when you do tick things off your list?
Yeah, very good question. I think I've not been very great at celebrating or being able to like fully um guiltlessly celebrate, because it always I am one of those people who falls into that trap of like, well, you did that but you still got this and this to do. And lately, particularly with the end of the year, but lately I've been really challenging myself, which sounds ridiculous, to just relax. And
Yeah.
I think of myself as a fairly like chill person. Like I love to just watch Netflix and, you know, lie in my pajamas till 3 p.m. But I don't do that without that little voice usually being like, you're a lazy piece of shit, or, you know, you should be doing this or that. So what I've been trying to do is being like, it doesn't have to be for an entire day, but being like, no, you deserve to just go off, have a bath, got my nice bath bomb from my friend Lara, and, you know, relax for an hour. And yet that other stuff isn't going away, but it also like, so what? Like, just enjoy that moment. So yeah, exactly, like presently living. So that's been kind of a challenge. And I guess listening to like the podcast and that being talked about, you know, even having just my little list to reflect on gives me like good butterflies sometimes. But I think one of the bigger things, rather than celebrating, is just literally giving myself space. So I've had a few challenges at the end of this year with you know, having not had work for a good chunk of the year and then a lot came in. I really struggled with saying no, in the sense of making sure I had enough energy and enough mind space for what was being asked of me. Because again, that voice in my head was like, you should be so grateful you've got work when it's been such a tough year. And then as things were sort of spiraling out of control, I was really being hard on myself. It was like there was no respite at all, because it felt like there was always more to do, and you should just be so, you know, thanking your lucky stars you've got work at all. So I think rather than celebrating, for me, it was about, even just like I said about next year, is just giving myself space and being able to say no to something without guilt. I mean, without going into too much details, I got I got into a bad headspace where I was starting to feel like, you know what, getting hit just a little bit by a car and being in the hospital for a few days would be excellent. And I was like, whoa, that's bad.
You've all thought that though. I mean, let's be real. We're all like, oh, what if I just had an accident and I didn't have to go to work or do that situation or have to walnut and say that thing? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. So what I started to unpack from that was not like you're a crazy mentally ill person, but it was like, why does that come into your head before saying to the work or whatever, saying, I'm really overwhelmed at the moment, or not even overwhelmed, but like this has gotten out of hand and I don't have the space for this. And it's because still to this day, physical illness or ailment or, you know, being hospitalized is a valid excuse. It feels valid. It's like, well, no one's going to argue with you if you're in the hospital with like a broken leg. But my mind had a broken leg. My mind had been hit by a car. I needed to go to the hospital in sense of like my little brain needed a rest. And so I just thought, I spoke to a few friends and some other producers who were, you know, really empathetic and obviously understand, you know, it's a pretty demanding business, which I love, but I had to start acknowledging it was not weakness on my part to be like, I am stretched too thin now and I need to hand this over, because it's actually getting dangerous for me in my mental state. You know, like you shouldn't be feeling like that. No one should ever feel like that. And they need to take some time to work out what went wrong and how to get better from it. So one of my hugest walnuttings was speaking to the person who had hired me, who luckily was also a friend, and she really understood. It was a very demanding project, and I just had to I was like, I'm not going to play the COVID card. I'm not going to run out into the street or anything crazy. I'm just going to be like, I am feeling terrible right now. This project sort of gotten a bit bigger than what I originally signed up for. And I've been trying my best to make it work, but I'm at a point now where I just can't, and I need to draw a line under it. And the response I got was overwhelmingly understanding, and you know, they got through it. It's one of those things where I'm like, I know I've been on projects where someone else has had to dip out for similar reasons, and we get through it. You know, everyone always says, if I'd been hit by a car and hospitalized, they would have worked it out and gotten through it. So for me, I celebrated that with like, I think I drank some straight gin because I was so like relieved. I was like shaking, like, oh my God. And it was hard to like, that was a momentary feeling of like, well done. You said you didn't get to breaking point. You put the brakes on it before you got to that point. And I was glad of that, but it was really hard to shake it off. I felt really out of sorts for a while. I felt like I wasn't good enough. I had kind of, am I any good in this industry anymore? Like a lot of doubts. So it's interesting when you talk about celebration, because for me, the thing I really had to celebrate was believing in myself, even when I had to say no to something, not like celebrating you got through that really hard thing, but actually celebrating you didn't make yourself go through that really hard thing because you didn't have to. And since then I've been on another project, which I was really excited about, which got put on hold for next year and I can't continue with, but like that really brought me back and made me feel quite excited again. I've got stuff lined up for next year and things. So it's all fine. And the work, it wasn't the end of my career, but in that moment, it was really hard to see past the present. When things are hard, you really live in the present because it's terrible. And when things are good, it's almost like, well, how long is that going to last? So I think it's that. It's knowing like, what do you need right now? How do you get it? And then make sure, like, try not to feel guilty about asking for what you need.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good example of clearing space for that free-flowing, not easy job, but for the ones that actually just bring you that job satisfaction and make you feel joy. Like I have a smaller scale example where I had to organize something for my new boss, and I got really, really overwhelmed because I didn't actually know what to do, because I hadn't actually been told what to do, but I got told what the end result was, and I didn't really know how to do it or anything like that. And so I spent probably the good part of half a day spiraling and snowballing. And that was, I didn't do anything else because I just sat there for that long, freaking out about and trying to figure out how the fuck am I supposed to do this? Like, I don't understand. So I ended up walnutting and sending her a text and saying, hey, I know that I've scheduled this time for your admin, but can I please have it? Because I'm spiraling. I don't know what to do and I'm overwhelmed. And once I had that conversation, it was like, I had kind of already done it. She was like, yeah, that's fine. That's good. You're done. Is there anything else? Sort of thing. Like, and it just cleared space for me to be able to think about other stuff. And I think that that's a really important thing. So, celebration. I like that. Celebration is kind of like allowing gratitude for the things so that you have space for the other things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and actually I think what you said just reminded me of, I guess, a key thought, because we've been talking about like, what do you want, what are your goals, that kind of thing. Sometimes saying like, what do you want feels very like demanding, it feels very selfish. It's not, but it can feel like that. I think a really big thing that I've undervalued is asking for what you need. And knowing that sometimes what you think you're going, oh, well, I would like this, I would like that, is actually a need. So like I had a similar thing. Beginning of the year, I was super rusty. I got asked to put this kind of budget together, and I've done that a million times. It's always a bit different at every company. And I got this kind of blank page and I was like, oh my God, I don't even know how to start this. And I spiraled, but very short period. But I was like 5-10 minutes of like, oh, I don't know what to do. And again, like all the terrible thoughts. I'm so terrible. I don't know how to do my job. And I thought, well, what do you need to make it easier? And I was like, I need an example. And I'd worked for this company before. I went, do you mind just sending me that budget from that last job as a reference? 2 minutes later, yeah, here you go. And then I was away. And I thought, I could have let that, back in the day, I would have let that lie, or I would have powered through without it. And I think being able to take that second, that moment, get that headspace, all of that, and be like, what do I need to make this easier? Because a lot of people don't have that problem. They'll ask for stuff and sometimes you're like, oh, come on, work it out already. But you still send it to them. Like, it's like, you never go, well, you can't have that information. But I struggle with that. I think a lot of people do, because they feel like it's either weakness to ask questions or they should just, I don't know, or just like it doesn't even occur to them to ask for help. And sometimes it's not help, it's not want, it's not like, you know, a cheat code. It's literally just something that's necessary and needed that maybe no one had thought of until you ask, and it's completely reasonable. So, you know, my dad said this to me when I was quite young. He said, always ask the next question. And basically what that meant was like, even if you think you've got it and you know everything that's going on, sometimes just being like, so what I understand from this task is blah, 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 blah. And they go, yep, that's right. That's that next question that you've asked, just to get that confirmation, just to get what you need out of the conversation. And it's literally such a simple thing. And yet constantly I get myself worked up and then realize, oh, just ask for that thing. It's fine. And yeah, and then when it gets to bigger things, I get even more wound up. So a big challenge has been asking for what you need. And that's what I've been trying to do.
I love this. And I'm also singing the Rolling Stones in my head. You can't always get what you want. Yeah. And it's like, you get what you need. Oh, yeah. And that makes me feel like that. And I feel like that actually is walnutting on so many scales, because these conversations always come back to the big anxiety snowball attack of the mind. But yeah, it does get, yeah. And it's so common and it's so normal. And that's why I think that these discussions are so important, because yeah, sometimes asking your boss to send an example of something, or to give me half an hour just to make sure I'm on the right track or something like that, is the scariest thing to ask. But once you do it, it's like, feels so much better.
And it's funny because it's like, why does that feel scary or silly, or not like you're not worth that time, or worth, you know, or whatever. I think sometimes it's like we hold ourselves to too high a standard, essentially. Is I never think anyone any less of anyone, or anyone being weak for asking me questions or asking for examples or whatever, unless it's super crazy or super basic. But like I always am like, yeah, good question, I'll explain that, or whatever. And usually things do take more time to explain than you think. Like you give the initial kind of outline or whatever, and then people, they follow up. It makes sense. So I just think sometimes that it's like, just don't need to hold yourself to such a high standard where it's like you should just know everything without ever asking anything, or you should handle the craziest of jobs without breaking a sweat or, you know, crying at night, you know. And that's been a thing, being like, it's not weak to say no, it's strong. And I think there's a lot of industries where the foundations has been set on you work till you know,
die,
faint. Yeah, and it's like, and that's people have done before you, and it's like almost like that hazing process where the people who are higher up are like, well, we did those hard nights and now your turn. And I think it's hard to change a system like that. And I guess the other thing that I've learned too is it's sometimes so important just to reach out for advice. And when I was really struggling, I was messaging a friend of mine, and she said, and honestly meant the world to me, she was like, do you want to just have a quick chat? And I was like, yes, I do. And it wasn't like I was afraid to ask. Again, it was like I hadn't given myself the headspace to even think of that. That's what I needed. And we had this great chat. And because she was a producer, I could talk to her on that really like gritty, you know, production level. And she understood it all and gave me some really great advice. And and she gave me some really good advice. And it was just kind of like, that's what I needed in that moment, because I was just going around and around in my head. So talking it out with people and basically almost being like, you know, when you start with, am I crazy? And then almost always they're like, no, you're not crazy. And you're like, I thought so. But while it's just going around in your head, you can talk yourself and talk yourself in the most mean ways. Just get through it. Like, you know, you've managed it before. Like, don't be so weak. Don't be so silly. No one's going to respect you if you blah, blah, blah. And all those kind of swirly thoughts. And the next day you might get yourself all worked up like, yeah, I'm just going to quit this. And that's also not great, you know, and you just need that balance, like to find that equilibrium. And I think often chatting it out with friends and being vulnerable and being like, I'm really struggling right now, is the strongest thing to do, because you're only going to get truth and results and advice and, like, ultimately freedom from those cycles of thoughts when you let them out in a kind of healthy way, and in an honest way, without being cruel to yourself or being self-sabotaging, in the sense of just battle it through. I mean, maybe if I continued through, I'm sure it would have been fine, and in the sense of the job probably would have been fine, but I think I would have just had an extra few nights of horrible sleep and no appetite and feeling really, really anxiety driven. And that was 5 days too many for me. I was like, no, I don't want one more day of that. And that's fair. That's okay. And you can do that still with dignity and still with professionalism and still with grace. And if you are working with decent human beings, they will understand. And if you're not working with decent human beings, then you're better off without them.
Yeah. And again, it opens the door for the new stuff to it makes the space for stuff that makes you feel better to come in, rather than carrying around this like huge thing of 5 extra nights drinking red wine and eating cheese, not the nice cheese, like old yuck cheese. Just
I couldn't even do that. That's how bad it was. When I can't drink wine or eat cheese, it's bad.
It is bad. I do love wine and cheese. It's like more of a on the happy end wine and cheese for me. But going back to finishing up the year and stuff like that, one interesting note was that people who run a race, they actually, or like horses, whatever kind of race, they actually cross the finish line multiple times before the ribbon gets put up and they finish the race. So I think it's really important to acknowledge the small walnuttings of the year, where you did ask your boss for help, you did say no to the job, and then using the end of the year, in this masterclass she talks about building blocks. A year is not the end of the thing, it's actually just another block in your success over a lifetime. And so everything that you've accomplished this year you can choose to leave some of the stuff behind, and you can choose what you take on to the next year for the next building block. And I think that's a really beautiful visual and analogy. So with that question in mind, and just before we wrap up, Kate, I'd like to hear about what are some of your favorite accomplishments that come to mind, or what's your favorite walnutting from the year that you why don't you share a little bit about, this is the year that I ... for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I have thought about probably more like tangible things, but I think this is the year that I managed to stay financially independent, having not made any money for like 6 months.
Yeah,
huge. I think that's something I take forward, in the sense of I know I can. I mean, I always knew I'm an adult, I can manage my money, but I managed my money through a very difficult time, which I'd never experienced before. And I know there's a fear when you're in freelance of, if you don't get the next job, how are you going to pay rent? And that fear is kind of gone now, which means this is a year that I have kind of fearlessly gone into work, knowing that or maybe next year will be the year I fearlessly go into work more so, because I know that I can say no to things if they're too much, or wait for the jobs that are right for me. Because again, I've got that foundation from this year where I'm like, I'm not going to be destitute. I'll be okay. And like, that was a really big one to know, like the worst kind of did happen. Not having work for 6-7 months is kind of unheard of. And I got through that. So that was the year that I, kept food on the table for myself and a roof over my head. And I think this is a year that I really put the time and put in value to passion projects. I tried to get a few kind of short filmy things going, but even just, again, like reviving the cover and getting that out there, working on your podcast and doing that film for your birthday, the Walnut birthday, remembering that brings me joy, that the reason I'm in this industry is not just to put food on the table. It's because I love making films, whether they are corporate or charity or brand or for my best friend. So that was the year that I kind of rediscovered why I do what I do. Yeah, I think those are the two big ones. And then this is the year that I call my friends and check in on them as much as I tell them to, like, I need to chat because I'm spinning out. And again, like, just not undervaluing friendships. We talk a lot, which is really, really valuable, but reaching out to, like, I know I love you. But reaching out to people that maybe I didn't speak to all that often and would only see every few months, and being like, well, just because I can't see them doesn't mean I can't do that same checking in. So particularly, friends in the industry, making sure I know they're going through similar things, and having chat with that friend Jenny, the producer, was just such a highlight for me in a really dark place. So the year that I am like, I have more friends than I realized, and that they are there and I'm there for them, was a really good reminder for this year to take forward as well.
That's really delicious. I love that so much. So, Walnut, I encourage you to, let us know, share this episode and let us know this is the year that I ... and what that is for you. Kate, we ask this all the time. I feel like we know exactly what a walnut means to you, but have you got a new, from the year that we've had and all the chats and all the episodes that we've done, have you got a new sentence on what being a walnut means to you? Has that evolved at all?
I'm not sure if it's new, but my flatmate, who I've just got onto the podcast, was kind of asking me about it because she's new to it, and I was trying to explain it, to someone who didn't know. And I said, well, I think it's the way you talk about yourself, because I knew it originally the analogy came out from you kind of sometimes talking down and saying I'm a silly little peanut, and that a walnut was that more resilient, stronger, like harder version, And I said, so I think it's more like the way you want to view yourself as the strongest, confident, most brave version of yourself, but still yourself, in the sense of you don't have to not be a goober and say the wrong thing, but you don't necessarily have to beat yourself up about the dumb thing that you said, So being you and being happy in that, and kind of fearless and confident and strong in knowing who you are, is not a little peanut. It's a really, like, good, strong, hearty version of yourself.
I love that. I've got actually little tears in my eyes. I think that's beautiful, and I think it's so wonderful that you took the time to describe that to someone who was new to listening to the podcast, because it is a weird thing to be like, what is Walnut Wednesday? What does walnut mean? Is it like this? And that's all that I could have ever asked for this podcast, is for someone to reply to someone saying exactly what the fuck you just said. Like, it's really nice. I'm having a really delicious full circle moment, and I'm feeling a bit emotional. That's so wonderful.
I love it.
Kate, can you let the walnuts, they obviously are already obsessed with you and love you as much as I do, but if they are new, Walnut, I love you so much. Thank you for being here. But Kate, can you let everyone know where to find you and if they want to snoop some of your stuff? And I know that the cover you can watch online now as well. Do you want to just share where people can find your work and things like that?
Yes. So you can kind of see me, and I put up some stuff for projects and shoots and things sometimes on Instagram, Miss K Bromley. I will send you the link to the cover. It's on a platform called Vimeo, and it's available to watch, so I can put the link and maybe we can add that in somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I think if you go on YouTube and you search Kate Bromley Showreel, you'll find my showreel of work as well, which is about a year out of date now, but it's 2-minute watch. So if you're ever like, what does she do? What stresses her out so much? You can see a little clip on that. It's also on my Facebook, which is just Kate Bromley as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll put those into the show notes. So if you guys want to go back and check it out, Walnut, you absolutely can. But Kate, thank you so much for another wonderful chat and being a repeat guest on Walnut Wednesday. I so appreciate your time. I love it. It's like something to I look forward to recording every week, but it's just like one of those little things to look forward to. And also milestones, like episode 60, man. What the fuck? Like,
I know. I love it. As I say, I always love coming on, and like, it's just chatting with a friend, but like, it's so valuable to have friends that you can talk to about this kind of stuff. And I do it with way more people than I ever used to, but it's never more comfortable, like warm pajamas chatting with you. So I'm glad to be back. I love it.
Oh, thank you. And Walnut, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. And let us know this is the year that I ... Please like, share, all the things. But more than anything, thank you for taking the time to like listen to us chat. It means the world to us, and keep us posted, and join the Walnut Tree, which is the Facebook group. We have a celebration thread, we have a self-development thread where it's just like everyone shares all the things. So it's a wonderful, delicious, safe space to have this kind of discussion. So yeah, thank you guys. And Kate, again, I love you and I appreciate you. You're beautiful, sexy, and delicious. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.